big man knows all the. Big man.
So, what you press down, isn't it?
No.
That way, yeah.
All there.
Okay.
All right. So, hello. My name's Alex Hill.
Jack.
And Dan.
Right, let's go on to the next one. This is our final pitch project. Right. We are explaining each person in this group. So, Jack Guppy, and we've included our speciality. Special, whatever that says. Acting, cameraman, props holder. Alright,
Okay.
come on, let's go. Dan Finney, height, age, what he's special at, right? And then on to me. Right, here we go. Right.
That's a lie.
That's not a lie, mate, it's true. Right, so what we've done here, we've casted our members and we've pretty much wrote down everything they will be doing and every role and what they will be wearing, what prop they'll be hold of, and everything else. So, yeah, right. So move on to the next one. Right, this is our research. I was inspired highly when I visited Berlin. We were, weren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we were surrounded by nothing but history of war, so the only thought we did have was, let's just do war. So yeah, like, you know, this is a lot of research we got on. And then this is our cooling conventions. You know, we had to look into that and research that. Right, do you want to do a bit more?
Just speeding through it, man.
Yeah, am I speeding through it?
You are speeding
These are
through
your
it a fair
slides
bit.
as well, so
Yeah, these are also your slides.
Yes. Okay. Right. I'll just do a lot of talking on it. Alright. So, yeah, this is like exploring all the conventions and all the printed language, spoken language in the media industry and that. Audience. So obviously, this film is going to be a war film. It's graphic, so we've aged this film 14 plus, and you know we've quoted down that obviously if you watch under the age it's illegal according by law. And also, you know, it's got gore, blood, graphic images, so it wouldn't be suitable for anyone younger than 14. And it also has flashing images, so people with epilepsy, you know, it might not be suitable for them. Right, here we go.
background settings. So World War. We're just gonna try and do it as a battleground for its best.
Mhm.
It's like warfare. So obviously I did a bit of research with the bitches. So we're going with a sort of like sniper thing.
Yeah, Sniper short film, based upon two soldiers meeting on a battlefield. So one German soldier and one Russian soldier. But it includes three characters but flashes back to the memory of one of the Russian soldiers seeing his friend lose his life. So he's just alone. And then he meets the German soldier, and instead of killing each other, they become friendly as they're both young, scared, and they don't know what they're doing across battlefield lines.
These are the two locations we got at the moment. So ideas for
Ideas for
Yeah.
location.
We're not obviously
Yeah.
just yet.
Right, and then we've got sort of like uniforms, like props and uniforms, which is so sort of first things first. You've got sort of uniforms for like allies. So these are British ones. So basically, it takes using a very olive colour. It's very simple colours. So you've got like the olive drab for standard infantry, and same for like armoured. So you've got a very much standard olive, while airborne uses
Like
a
Rocky one.
more camouflaged tone with different helmets. So depending on sort of like budget and constrictions and time constrictions, depends on what sort of uniform will be used in the final thing. Weaponry, and we have like this Axis uniforms. So it's relatively similar to the airborne with the camouflage patterns, but they also use it's a lot softer, less use of helmets, with more softer equipment, and they also have a very similar sort of camo pattern to the airborne stuff. So it'll be a case of using props to distinguish between the two with helmets and hats, mostly. and then also have like weapons and props. So use of props. So we were thinking so we've got like Axis stuff that could be used for an Axis props, sort of weaponry. So we were thinking for the Allies at least pistols, lighter weaponry, or the Axis might have something a bit more in the way of heavier to show that difference between what
The
each
nations,
person have and the
yeah.
difference between the nations.
And note we will have to notify the police to let them know we are using firearms.
Well, not
props.
firearms, but props.
Yeah.
If we're using
outside
firearms, then
college.
that's something
Yeah.
Very
No,
not
no,
good,
we
and they
use
will
fine.
not be pleased.
No, we'll use props. So yeah.
Yeah.
Right, go on to the next one.
Yeah, and then
This is our mood board of
sort of
1943. Of literally like wartime's colour image, smoke, and what really just the only thought of what was in your head during 1943 in the war. Yeah.
so very much death.
Yeah.
It's 1943 was seen as sort of the lowest part of the war, where nobody was sort of winning, and it was very much a bloodbath. So morale is low throughout the entire east, west, and Central Powers, and there are no real victories. So it helps bring context into the fact that everyone was at their lowest point, and the war at that point was seen as a bloody, merciless struggle.
So let's talk about the location we are going. Our story is based upon. So
Like location.
yeah.
Location-wise, we've got two ideas in mind. We're either setting it in Eastern Europe, in sort of like late 43, early 44, during Soviet breakout campaign, or mid 1944 in France, which gives us it means that the German uniform stays the same, and the only difference will be the Allied uniforms, which are a lot cheaper and easier to acquire than the German stuff due to the cost of reproducing things, and with the mass production of props and stuff. It
Yeah.
also allows us to have some sort of difference in our film, as a lot of films, especially over here, are based in France and especially Normandy in particular, which would help set our one apart from other films in the genre.
Yeah, I think we should, whilst we have the weekend coming up, I think we should all watch more war films, make sure we get, the stronger idea of what we're kind of looking at, uniforms, what their attitudes were to each other, and, did they have, banter, were they aggressive towards one another, even though they're on the same team, same side, let's not say team, but it's just like what their actions were, what their body gestures were, and we could take down what the environment really did look like back in the time. We could also interview some people maybe that's been to war,
It would be more of a case of reading historical texts with
could read more books
with
as well.
time now, due to the lack of veterans, especially of the theatres that we're talking about,
Yeah.
due to their age, and sadly the majority of them are either very ill and aged, or are no longer with us. So it's a case of reading
Yeah.
through historical texts and working in that way to get as accurate as we possibly can with how everything goes together.
Yeah, and obviously, as we have been over to Germany, we have got, the environment of how these Germans were brought up, the environment, what they've lived in. They haven't exactly grew up bad, but during the war, it was a lot different. It was completely different towards what it was now. As I was there, I saw bullet marks all over the walls and things, and compared to now, it's peaceful. And well, back then it'd just be a nightmare living there, as it'd just be a main war zone, wouldn't it? Yeah. So yeah.
Any questions?
Yep, cool. Can you talk me through the narrative again?
So narrative. What we're thinking is we've got two soldiers have just bailed out of their tank that's been knocked out. This gives them a sort of reason for why they're running, why they're scared, why they want to hide, because they have lost all sort of support and their equipment. They've lost friends. They've lost everything that they held dear within the last years to months is just gone in the blink of an eye. They then see a shell hole, a basement. We're not sure yet. A ditch to take cover in, and they come across a German soldier. And this German soldier, due to one of them will get caught by machine gun fire as he's making his escape. The other one gets into the ditch and meets a German soldier, and who has them over a gun. And soldiers sort of there's no point in fighting, and they talk, they share a cigarette, say, and this leads them to sort of the tensions to die down. But as both have weaponry, this tension builds up again, and they sort of they've both got motive to kill each other. As the tension builds up, it goes more and more towards them killing each other, and it's sort of what will happen as it sort of builds up to what happens, and then one of them will die ultimately, and the other one will survive. It's just a case of who.
Yeah, we like the idea of two completely different soldiers trapped, maybe where they cannot get out of somewhere, maybe like a hole in the ground where they can't get out without teamwork. And obviously because one's ally and one's, the other, they will not help each other, but they have to adapt to each other to survive, obviously. So we are looking into maybe a massive hole we could find where it's suitable for filming, suitable for equipment, and where we can actually get our actors and make sure we get the shots on, and because obviously two completely different soldiers don't want to be in the same place. If they could leave, they would leave it instantly, wouldn't they? So maybe if they're just trapped and they cannot leave, maybe they just have to adapt with another.
Yeah. The overall narrative I like. You need to finalise it.
I agree. It does need a bit of polishing up and
your
finalising.
act 2, you've got a good act 1, incite an instant, straight away, banging with the action, disrupt the equilibrium, and then we are constantly trying to repair with escape. It's good, it's solid. You've got a strong narrative there. When they find each other, what is the impetus for them to not shoot each other straight away? I mean, I know you were saying about trying to get out of somewhere.
So what I was thinking was an artillery bombardment.
Yeah.
For example, this forces them to take cover and shelter, say, in a shell hole, out of the way. Otherwise, if they go out, they're going to be blown to bits. They are. So this gives them a reason to stay there. It gives them a reason to almost stay sort of away from everything else and together. As if they leave, they die.
Yeah.
So this means that they are forced to interact.
Can you remove their weapons?
That's quite
Yeah, because if you remove it, then it becomes, if they do need to attack each other, it has to become a lot more intimate, doesn't it? Yeah. So that's the thing. It's that joining together and then the falling apart that you really need to flesh out exactly how that's going to happen. But yeah, and you can play with it as well. You could have him in a British uniform that he's stolen and he's wearing, and he doesn't speak until you let something slip, and it turns out it's a German. So there's different ways you can play it out. Okay.
I thought a little bit that I was interested to think about your primary research. I thought maybe you're being a little bit too specific. You're saying we can't interview anybody because there isn't anyone to interview, but you could interview a current soldier and get some insight into what it is like being in the army. It doesn't have to be someone I think just try not to be too specific. That stood out. So maybe coming up with some ideas for how you could think about your research a bit more effectively.
And I think with that as well, it's even just thinking about opinion. The crux of yours is actually about the differences and similarities between two sides.
Yeah.
So it's even asking those soldiers, how did you actually feel about the enemy in certain situations? Maybe if it's things like Iraq, or if it's things like Afghanistan, maybe it was a lot more, they are the enemy because we've seen this. But when it was Iraq and it's a bit more complicated, and then when you go further and it's things like Syria and it's even more complicated, you know, do they actually see them as an enemy, or are they just, this is another force?
Yes, well, there's one book that I got a heavy idea for this on called A Higher Call by Adam Makos, and it's about a Luftwaffe flying ace who it's quite a famous story, but he spares an American bomber after he sees it's been so heavily shot up, and he escorts it back to Britain. He does, and that gave me quite a large inspiration for this, with sort of like the morality of conflict, because he couldn't bring himself to shoot on the bomber as it didn't shoot back, and he was
and that you could even
quite an
do
amazing
that
story.
as a bit of interesting research into moral questioning, isn't it? At what point
at what
do
point
you have
does
sympathy?
I mean, they're both teenagers. You know, they've just been told they're going on the front line. You know, it's like if we were just put on the battlefield, we wouldn't want to kill anyone. So maybe it's just their, you know, that instinct. They just don't want to kill anyone.
You can find that out by doing some research. So that was just trying to pin the point. Don't be so specific.
That's what's quite good about it.
Also, Dan, I was wondering if you could give us a little bit of breakdown on your input, just so that.
My input.
Yeah.
Sure.
What do you mean, sir?
What's going to be your role? Maybe you could just give us a bit more.
Research and
What your
stuff.
plan is? I just thought it was quite heavy on these two, so maybe you could,
Yeah.
because obviously the pictures for all three
Well, I
of
don't
you.
really know as much about the war, and obviously I didn't go Berlin. But I mean, I still like the idea. I think as though it's a good idea.
So are you going to be? Sorry, I missed what you were going to be at the start. Is it cameraman or?
I think I'm acting.
He's
Yeah,
cameraman. He is the second allied soldier that you.
Okay, so
in
you
the
might need to
background.
just think, Dan, certainly in terms of the picture moving forward, what is your particular role? Because you will need to have a part that matches across all three, so that you're going to pass and do enough to meet the criteria. So maybe some thinking about that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think maybe, you know, if you are feeling you're more of the visual side, that's where your research really needs to take you, and thinking about how you
the shots of cameras and all that.
shot types, shot construction, overall cinematography, colour grading, all that kind of stuff. And that's something for all of you to kind of look into going forward. You said you're going to look at existing products, and that's really where you need to go and look at these types of things, look at how they use different colour schemes, especially that, you know, there tends to be a very typical colour grade for war films.
It's very desaturated, very sort of greys.
And it's really identifying how you get that and whether you want to go with that. I can't remember it. What was the name of was it Mel Gibson made it? The film about the guy who was in the Japanese theatre, in the island theatre, who was dragging people off the battlefield.
That is
Hacksaw Ridge.
Hacksaw Ridge, is it a Mel Gibson film? I think it's a Mel Gibson
Did
film.
you notice the colour grading was vastly different in that it was very bright. It was still the same kind of greys and greens.
But it's sort of very much a sort of, it's because of that, it's because of he's not killing people, he's saving them.
And that's what you can consider with yours, because you've got that slightly different mood and tone, or maybe you don't, because by the end of it, or do you want things to be slightly different, or are you going to follow conventions?
I think it's quite good, because it really sort of like, it gets all, even towards the end of the film, further through the film, the brighter it gets, because it starts off as very sort of dark.
So we could
'Cause
go
his
from dark to
father's-
bright.
And obviously not overdo that, it needs to be subtle,
Yeah.
but it's something you can consider. And again, even with the cinematography, so as they get more relaxed, does the camera move away from, like, when they're close together and everything's tense, is it all close up and close-ups, and then as they relax a bit, we move more to mid-shots and wide shots, and then again move back in. So really thinking about visual communication, the camera is telling the story. The actors are nowhere near as important as the camera for the actual performance. So how much of the camera is doing the performance, and how much can you plan that out and make sure that works? I just want to say as well, 14 plus. Is that a certificate?
15, you mean?
15, I went, not 14.
So what you need to
You've
do
been
is
looking at PG-13, haven't you?
Alright.
so you need to check BBFC
Yeah.
and actually look at their guidelines. Don't just go, oh, it's got blood and, because actually blood and guts and gore often it's 12, right? So look at specifically
It's
what
like
is
language, and it's like psychological is more 15. It also depends on the severity of the gore, because old war films with very little blood that have been
So
18s and now 12s.
Exactly.
And
and
PG.
The importance of that then is if you clearly define that, you've also identified a further audience, haven't you? So if you're saying something's a 15, you're ruling out a chunk of the audience.
Mm.
Whereas if actually it doesn't need to be a 15 and it can be a 12 or 12A, you've got an extra audience.
Mm.
And you've got people who 12A who will take their kids to see it if it's got
Yeah.
a war-based film, because it might have that history edge to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just all those extra little things to think about for target audience.
And also,
Yeah.
we also thought, as they're both together, they exchange food,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like biscuits,
Yeah.
chocolate, you know, as they're gradually growing friendship.
Yeah.
After putting the guns and things away, you know, they're just.
So you've got lots of things you can look
Yeah.
at
Mhm.
with those situations, like, you know, from that questionable Sainsbury's advert a couple of years ago. About
Oh, right, the
Christmas.
Christmas one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
The thing
remember.
is that entirely is true.
Mm.
It
But
is.
whether it
World
should be
War
used
One.
to sell chocolate at Christmas
No,
time.
it shouldn't be used to sell
But-
chocolate, but it's good with the
Yeah.
message of friendship and
But like again, 1914. If you
Yeah.
haven't seen it, there's a part of that which something, you know, there's two parts of that which are quite similar. You've got it in Saving Private Ryan. You've got it in Band of Brothers.
Mm.
You know, there's loads of World War II films where you have these come together. Even Tarantino and Glorious Bastards. You know, you've got elements of it there.
Mm.
So it's just have a good look at all those examples. And
Yeah,
find
because
things that match up.
there's a scene that I just remembered from Monuments Men
Mhm.
where they hear the noise in the woods and he goes outside with his goes out to the toilet and he goes with his rifle and comes across a like 70-year-old German kid with a Mauser
Yeah,
and
yeah.
a cigarette. It's like, is it cigarettes? And it's like, yeah, and it's sort of like that, and he's just shove him off into the woods and like go away.
Yeah.
That sort of thing,
So it's
isn't
about those balances. Yeah.
it? Mm.
Okay.
Cool. Yep.
I would like to see kind of maybe just a breakdown from you, Dan, of what your plan is moving forward, just so that I can make sure I'm clear, moving on from the pitch, that you have a plan. Is that okay?
Yeah. Read more into the story, like the actual storylines of it. Watch more movies and just not movies, just more like.
You
film,
can go and have a think
videos.
about it. It's more just so that you know,
Yeah.
moving forward, that you're taking on a good role and that
Yeah.
you know what the role is, so that
Yeah.
you can work happily moving forward. Is that
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
Cool. Brilliant.
Great.
Okay,
Yeah.
guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, I can breathe again.
Alright, tell you what, watch more films.
Yeah, you want me to make you a list?
I've already got the list.